Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the game between the Sharks and the Penguins, in which the Sharks managed to win 5-2 in a game that probably rivals the Tampa Bay one a couple weeks back as the Sharks' best game of this season. Because besides the first 10 minutes, where it seemed as though both teams were sort of feeling each other out, and Letang scored the goal to make it 1-0, the Sharks were the better team for the majority of this game. The last 50 minutes, I thought the Penguins had a couple good chances in the second period, and then maybe a couple good chances when it was 4-1 in the third period, as well as with the goalie pulled where they scored with Derek Brassard. But other than that, the Sharks were just so much better than the Penguins for the majority of the night. They were able to shut down Crosby. He had a couple of very good plays, I will give that to him, but otherwise, it was rather ineffective. Evgeny Malkin and Phil Kessel were mostly invisible. I thought Malkin had a very bad game for the Penguins, actually. And so the Sharks able to shut down the three main offensive forces for the Penguins, and Norris-winning Letang, while he had Norris candidate Letang, while he had that great goal in the first period. After the first period, he also sort of fell off a bit in this game. And so just in general, a well-played game for the Sharks offensively, a well-played game for them defensively, as they get their 7th win in a row. The goal scored after the Penguins got that first one by Letang to make it 1-0. Marcus Sorensen and Tomas Hertl make it 2-1 by the end of the first period. The second period, it was only Joe Thornton, even though the second period was mostly dominated by the Sharks. And then in the third period, Tomas Hertl added his second and then an empty net goal later on to complete his second career hat trick, as I'm sure everyone remembers his first career hat trick in his third ever game against the Rangers with that beautiful goal that he scored against Martin Biron, basically making him retire at that point is the joke I like to say. And the Sharks, they get the 5-2 win, another huge win for them. And if you take a look, I'm sure maybe some Sharks fans will have pushed this out of their memory, but think back to the 2016 playoffs. The Sharks make it through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs. They were performing very well, and they come up against the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'm sure a lot of Sharks fans, including myself, had some hope coming into this one. But the Penguins, I mean, let's be honest, completely dominated that series. I don't even think it was the Sharks playing bad in that series. The Penguins just seemed to be so much better all around. They had much better depth, much better speed, and the series went 6 games only because of the heroics of Martin Jones. That series could have been 4, or I guess maybe 5 in general. And so the Penguins were just so much better. And then you look at the comparison tonight. The Sharks have bolstered their lineup with depth like Timo Meier and Evander Kane. They have Erik Karlsson now on the back end. And the Penguins really haven't gotten noticeably worse as a team in general. Yeah, a couple of pieces have moved around, but they still have the main core, and yet the Sharks managed to dominate them. Just a completely impressive game from the San Jose Sharks in general. First thing I'd like to talk about, it is Martin Jones, but I have to talk about Evander Kane and Tomas Hertl. These two players, in a game that featured, leading scorer on defense Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman in the world, Sidney Crosby, one of the top centers in the game. Some will say he's even the best center in the game at this point. Evgeny Malkin, one of the best. Phil Kessel. I felt as though Kane and Hertl were the 2 best players on the ice, and it wasn't even close. They just dominated every single time. I'll give credit to Donskoy too, their line mate, but Kane and Hertl were just absolutely insane. And Kane has been very good as of late, but I thought his game reached even another level. And, we'll recall back to when this hot streak mostly started, which was against his former team, the Winnipeg Jets, and he was very good in that game. I thought he was even better in this game than he was in that game. And Tomas Hertl, just that first goal that he manages to score, Evgeny Malkin is a player who built his reputation as being one of the best players in the league. How he's able to just out-muscle opposition. And I've compared Tomas Hertl's play style to that of Evgeny Malkin, and he basically sort of passes the torch from Malkin to Tomas Hertl with this play as he out-muscles Malkin along the wall, cuts to the middle, and scores a beautiful goal in general. Just both of these players were absolutely insane, and this is what the Sharks were hoping for when they signed Evander Kane as a technically unrestricted free agent and Tomas Hertl to a 4-year extension. And at the moment, this third line, best line in the game, best 2 players in the game, is clicking in every single possible level, defensively, offensively, everything. Next, I will come to the goaltender, Martin Jones, of course. He had an okay game. It wasn't entirely impressive. He was shaky a couple of moments, that one that snuck through him but managed to hit the post after that. He had no chance on the Brassard goal later on. Screened in front, very nice played shot by Brassard. It's sort of up in the air whether or not I think he had a chance on the Letang one, because this was an extremely well-placed backhander, and backhands are a lot more difficult to track for a goaltender than a forehand shot. but it was also somewhat slow moving compared to shots in general. So maybe Jones could have had it, but I'll give it to Letang because it was just such a beautiful shot to take and just in general a nice move to make into the zone. Next, I'm going to talk about sort of a lesser talked about defensemen. Of course, everything is made of Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson because they're putting up the insane numbers and they're just a lot flashier in the games. But Shemek, defensive partner of Burns, and Dylan, defensive partner of Erik Karlsson, both had very, very solid games. I thought Shemek in particular was looking very good in this game paired with Brent Burns. Dylan also, as he continues to be a very solid defensive partner for Erik Karlsson. I mean, Karlsson was so good in Ottawa when he had a solid defensive partner in Mark Mathot. And when he was moved out due to the expansion draft, and so last year Erik Karlsson was playing without Mathot, he did somewhat struggle, at least by Erik Karlsson standards. And now he's found another defensive kind of defenseman who's able to be more of a stay-at-home guy and cover for Erik Karlsson if Karlsson goes out to make an aggressive play in the offensive zone. And it seems as though Karlsson has been clicking because of that. Shemek and Dylan, it cannot be understated how much of an effect that they have had on Karlsson and Burns recently with their solid defensive play. Other players to mention, as of course, while Kane and Hurdle were the two best players on the ice, in my opinion, I felt like a lot of Sharks had some great games. Thornton and Sorensen. Thornton's second period was very, very good. I thought his third period, he took that penalty. It wasn't great, but I thought in general it was a solid game for him. I thought Marcus Sorensen as well in those first couple of periods was quite solid. Third period, again, it wasn't too great, but the Sharks' third period was mostly just spent with killing the time. I mean, the Sharks went something like after the Hurdle goal, it was like 5 minutes without a whistle, or just like 10 minutes in general with maybe a couple of whistles. So the Sharks did a good job of killing off the clock, so there wasn't really too much opportunity for plays. I thought Meyer had a pretty solid game, hit a post in this one, almost managed to break that goal streak. And in general, I thought also Justin Braun, I didn't mention him with Shemek and Dylan, but also had a solid game. If there is one worry, and it's not because of the play of the Sharks in general in this game, is that Erik Karlsson, he took a maintenance day. It is what was said prior to this one, and so the coach confirmed that he would end up being in the lineup, and he still ended up playing about 24 minutes. But one thing that was somewhat worrying was that Brent Burns got caught on the ice late in this game because of the fact that the Penguins pulled the goalie with like 3.5 minutes left, and Burns was on the ice for an extremely long period of time until the Penguins finally managed to score. And on basically the next shift, Burns was back on, and Erik Karlsson was not. So I think Erik Karlsson was benched later on in this game, possibly related to that maintenance day. Maybe he has a bit of an injury bugging him. And sadly enough for the Sharks and Erik Karlsson, they do have another game tomorrow. We'll see if I assume he'll end up being in the lineup. We'll see if he's able to handle his usual workload of like 27 plus minutes, close to 30 minutes, because he's been playing very well for the San Jose Sharks. He gets a point tonight, and it would be very disappointing for the Sharks if he does end up missing a game. And maybe against a team like Arizona, is it worth to sit Erik Karlsson to try and give him a bit more time to recover? I understand not sitting him tonight against the Penguins, but you're against the Coyotes. You have a massive lead on them. They're not some sort of dangerous team in the standings. You can maybe afford to sit Erik Karlsson for a game, and if it is a nagging injury, it's probably what I would do if I was in DeBoer's shoes. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action, as I said, tomorrow. They'll be playing off against the Arizona Coyotes, a team that in their previous meeting actually beat the San Jose Sharks. Even during this great stretch of games, it was an overtime victory for the Coyotes. The Sharks will be looking for a better result than that. Of course, the Coyotes are dealing with a ton of injuries at the moment, and they're somehow still managing to get some wins here and there, and they are technically, they're at the lower half of it, but they're in the playoff race for a wildcard spot with basically like every other Western Conference team that aren't in the top 5. But the Sharks should be able to get those 2 points, but it could be a bit of a trap game. Again, like it was possible against the Ottawa Senators, they're coming up against a team that doesn't necessarily require as much effort to defeat it, like the Penguins, like the Golden Knights, like the Lightning, and so the Sharks will still have to remain on their toes if they want to get the 2 points. Class dismissed.